Good morning. Can you hear me fine? You're still awake? You need some coffee? You're not? I'm going to talk a bit about data and taking data up to a cyber warfare level. When we talk about cyber war, maybe just an indication, do you think we are in a cyber war? Or do you think that is just some science fiction somewhere? Hands up. Cyber war. You sure about that? Right? If your bank details disappear and you see that as a cyber war against you, or not? Maybe. In the last decade or so, we've seen an increase in terms of nation states that launch attacks against other states. For example, the US that managed to stop the North Korean missiles from launching. We've seen the Stuxnet worm. That was a collaboration between the US and Israel onto Iran's nuclear facilities. And also the rigging of the US elections, that nobody knows how Trump got to be president. Now, apparently that was the Russians, so whether that's a cyber war, I don't know. And then, of course, also China, in terms of cyber espionage, has been active on specific platforms and detected in systems, especially in the UK and the US. And then Africa-wise, in terms of what is Africa, you see the previous presentation was all about the connectivity. And in terms of that connectivity, where does South Africa and where does the African content comes into play in this whole game of cyber war? Ek het my dingetjie kry om te werk hierso. We are at the early stages. It's what we refer to as a cold cyber war. And that has the possibility of developing into what we refer to as a hot cyber war, when it actually spill into a full kinetic war. Now, what we refer to by the cold cyber war, if you don't know, if you go back into the sort of original Cold War, is where countries realize on both sides, in terms of the nuclear race, that they are still developing their nuclear weapons, yes, but they're not utilizing that. You know what, they're just sort of keeping that on ice just to say, but we have this ability, but there's mutual and bilateral agreements between nation states to see, but we are going to destroy each other within this. Now, the cyber warfare is sort of moving into that same direction, and we see a lot of movement, especially from, you know, Microsoft has started with a sort of Geneva Convention of their own to, you know what, just force countries to, you know, they can still keep on developing both offensive and defensive type of warfare, but not to utilize that within a full-scale kinetic war. Now, if we talk about cyber war and the use of that digital attacks, then we refer to two environments, one the offensive side and one the defensive side. Now, in terms of the offensive side, that's, you know what, that's just warfare. You know, warfare and your principles of war stays the same. It's just that your technology has changed, and within that change in technology, it just enables you to sit here and control a bomb that is a number of k's away from you. You don't necessarily have to be on site. And we see a number of bombs that detonated in South Africa as well, just by using your mobile technology and by using your existing data networks and your Wi-Fi connectivity. But in terms of the cyber actors, in terms of that actors that are present in this environment, we tend to think that it's only the nation states, and we don't really have to worry about that. But we, as people on the ground, are forming part of this whole network, because all of us are connected. All of you have your mobiles connected to the local Wi-Fi. Yes, because data is quite expensive in South Africa now. So suddenly we have all of this IoT devices as well that come into this whole network, and I will refer to that a bit later. But in terms of our insiders are staff on the ground, and not just your disgruntled employee that can do some damage when paid a certain amount to a company, but also especially your IT infrastructure and your IT personnel that is responsible for bringing in that technology into the organization. And especially with your Internet of Things devices, is that we bring them in and we don't change default settings. Okay, so we keep that hardware-generated passwords and username that is available. And that is one of the biggest dangers of the Internet of Things. Then we have the hacktivists. We see them quite strong in South Africa, especially targeting. You know what, they go after the flavor of the day. So they decide today that, you know what, they are against a corrupt government that they see as corrupt. For instance, they did go after the ANC government, and we see a lot of defacing of websites. We also saw the cyber hub that came under attack a few months ago. And the same with the presidency. Not necessarily the hacktivists there, but the ability is there, and there is a show-off just to show that I am able to do this. So I'm telling you I'm taking down that site. But in most cases, that is still low-hanging fruit. You know what, that is just, you know, defacing a website. That's not really, is that really an attack that's going to mean something? And then your criminal networks. And your criminal networks has got a huge capacity. Remember that a criminal network is a business, and it's run like a business. If we take, for instance, the Fin7s and the Carbonacs, you know what, their turnover on an annual basis is more than $1 billion. You know what, that's a large company, and within that company, they still have to run their business. So they make use of IT personnel, and they make use of infrastructures. They also have to have connectivity. So they form part of this economy. And then we see countries such as the US with the NSA that developed quite a number of tools, specialized tools. And then suddenly your shadow brokers, that's apparently from Russia, that came in and hacked into those systems. And they made available all of those tools. And those tools are available as part of the Vault 7 that you can find on WikiLeaks. And it's really the suite of tools. It's hundreds and hundreds of tools that's been developed. And then also in your criminal networks is that they have a huge capacity for research and development. So if you're running, for instance, the crypto locker ransomware that generated in excess of 300 million euros. 300 million euros. And you just wrote that piece of code, and everybody's just clicking away. We like to click on links, no? We like to see, but you know what, maybe that direct me to Pornhub, and I want to see what this guy is doing, or maybe some minister, I want to see that video. And then I start clicking on the links. Yeah, so just by clicking on those links, that little ransomware that starts encrypting your hard disk, and then it asks for money. And ransomware is not a new thing. We just utilize the technologies to get to that funding model, that financial model. And then competitors. And we see a change in a number of countries that we sit with companies that is effective on a global level, and hardware and software-wise. But now we utilize software and hardware that's been developed in another country, and it runs our critical infrastructure. Now, what are you going to do in terms of a cyber war that is launched against that that country? Where do you stand then? So then suddenly this whole scenario changed, and that is why it's so vital that we utilize what we have and these resources that you guys have been talking about on this conference to develop your homegrown sort of local software. And utilize the resources to develop them. And then foreign nations, we talk about APTs, advanced persistent threats. And normally they come associated with a number, like a 37 or a 157. And they are state-sponsored. So you will see a number of APT groups that is active in South Africa, especially on a cyber espionage level, because we still sit with a number of resources. There's still money. Yes, believe it or not, there's still money in the country. It's not everything is taken up by the Guptas yet. So they are after IP, cyber espionage is very active within, and not just your large organizations, your small MMEs is continuously being targeted. And the bad thing is that we don't realize that they are in our systems. Another thing is bringing in hardware devices. How do you know what is on your mobile device? Where do you get your mobile? Just by hands. Who's running an Android? Who's got an Android phone? Yes, because that's the cheapest one, huh? Who's got the iPhone? See, those are the guys with money, huh? You just have to check them out. follow the money. But where do you know that cell phone was manufactured where? And is it able to assess within that what firmware is on there? Okay, what data is being sent back? And we had a number of cases in South Africa whereby we were provided with infrastructure by other countries, provided with infrastructures, like, you know what, yeah, here's your 300 laptops. Ooh, cool. And then only 4 months down the line that we realized, but we're sending all our data back to the country that gave that to us. You know what, that nothing is for free thing. Okay, now, in terms of all of these actors and in terms of the spaces, what do they utilize and how does the technology evolve and can we keep up with it? I think that's the big question. So we have ransomware, and ransomware is creating, you know, a lot of problems because it's still relatively easy to do that because people like to click and it's quite easy to get into the systems because we are in a reactive mode when it comes to security and cyber security. Our proactive systems is not yet in place. So our antivirus system runs on a signature. And if there's not a signature to compare that against, you know what, then you bypass that. And that's why the R&D in that environment is so essential. Where previously you were taught to check out for the HTTPS, where the SSL is active on that communication link. But that's not really something to check anymore because, you know what, 70% of your phishing links, your bad URLs, are utilizing SSL as well. So you think it's the safe thing, and you think that is APSA, and it currently is not the APSA link. Then we move into the .bit domains. Okay, so where your current domain system is managed by the DNS name system, now we have a .bit domain that is built on the blockchain data structure. Now remember your blockchain, that is where your bitcoins come in. Who's got bitcoins? So you see exactly the guys with the iPhones, huh? They've got the bitcoins as well. You see there is some money connection here. But not just Bitcoin, you know what? Because because that is a data structure, and we have this, we've seen the virtual currencies, and I will talk about the anonymity of that a bit later. But now you can create a .bit domain, and all that you need there is a hash is created. So there's no list of names associated, but you know what? That domain is registered in your name. Now that makes it a bit easier for the criminal entities. But how do we utilize that on the other side in terms of protecting our systems? Then botnets. Botnet is a little piece of code, a little piece of malware that's installed in your system. You don't realize that. And it only picks a number of your resources to utilize. So it doesn't do any bad on your side. But just think about it. I don't have access to my own high-performance computer. But if I can have access to a 2 or 3 million devices, you know, that includes your IoT devices, and I just pick a little bit of those resources, I can build quite a large machine, no? And we see the botnet is up for grabs, that you don't even have to do the installation yourself or the implementation itself. It is up for hire. And I talked about that sextortion thing. A number of people getting emails that and the email state is the same as the ransomware, but now the email state that, you know what, your camera was switched on and you visited Pornhub. Okay, so even if you don't, you know what, you start wondering, oh shit, maybe I did visit Pornhub. No? And this is the password you use, and it's one of your passwords. So where did they obtain that? How many breaches were there? LinkedIn and Dropbox and people Remember that security is about people. We need to understand people, and people don't like to change things. So I use my same password over my 300 accounts. So if you read that sextortion mail, then it will tell you, but listen, that is your password. And now you start wondering, oh, hell. And they are going to send that proposed video that they have of you to your wife, or publish that on your network or whoever. Okay, so you see, our minister wasn't worried about that. He just went along anyway. So. Okay, then we get to the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things connect things. And we like to, and you know what, it's a so exciting field that now you bring in all of these sensors and you bring in all of this data, but we don't really utilize all of that for the right reasons. We haven't really seen on these IoT platforms applications that can assist in protecting us from this environment. The Mirai was actually a botnet that utilized Internet of Things devices, and it ran a distributed denial of service attack against Brian Krebs. Brian Krebs he's got a blog, Krebs on Security. Go and read him; it's quite interesting. And he kept track of a number of criminal networks, and he was starting to publish some of their data. And that Mirai network actually managed 650 gigabits per second. And just think about that. That's a network of resources of just devices. Now remember that botnet thing. Is that picking up those resources from all those different devices? And it managed that size of a distributed denial of service attack. You can bring down some huge systems there. Crime as a service. You don't have to have the IT knowledge, but you can go online. You don't even have to go on the dark web. And you can have hacking as a service or ransomware as a service. And you can pinpoint, but you know what, I don't like that company. You know what, or I don't like that guy. Can you please run a ransomware against him? And you pay your, of course, in Bitcoins normally, or in some virtual currency like Ripple or Ethereum or whatever. And then you have available, and then we sit with a global market that you have to understand how the different countries operate in terms of regulations. So now you end up with bulletproof hosting in a number of countries that if it is published there, then you won't have a chance in hell to actually remove them. And then we move to the dark web. And the dark web is just a manner in which anonymity is provided. And because we do like that now, we don't like everybody to track what we are doing, and especially your network criminals. So in terms of that, they put forward the dark web, and the dark web is the same as your normal web. It just runs on a different protocol. So you will see your URL will end with .onion and not a .html. So when you know it ends with a .onion, then you know what, that's a dark web link. And it's not illegal to go onto the dark web. Don't be scared. Okay, it's just a number of sites that utilize a different URL. So you download the Tor browser. There at the bottom, you can see it's built on Firefox. So if you're familiar with the Firefox browser, then your Tor browser is exactly the same thing. And the dark web refer to that section, actually their own closed internet. And within that section, then you have a number of criminal forums, and I will get to that as well. We normally refer to, it's like visiting the dark web is like going to the pawn shop and see whether your data is there. Okay, so you don't realize your data has been stolen. It's there, and I think a large number of companies don't utilize that forums in terms of that driving that intelligence to know proactively, but you know what, there is something wrong on my systems and my data is up for grabs. There you can see is the arms core dump, and it's still open. Just one of the open servers. There's an actual site that lists 70 of our governmental servers that are still open. So you can just access it. It's for free. A number of the forums you have to register, of course, or you have to wait for an invite. And then we have the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Criminal Things. Okay, that's just an example what you can buy on Alibaba in terms of skimmers. You know, your ATM skimmers. So that one comes in at around about $350 US. So for under 50 Rand, you can buy your own skimmer. And you don't have to be near that ATM machine. You can transfer that data wirelessly. So you can sit outside in the parking lot and you just have all the data that's connected to that card. And then coming into the people on the ground, and how do we form part of these networks in terms of your social networks? You're socially active? Yes, we are. No, Facebook and Insta. Who's on Facebook? Is it still alive? Not really. Instagram. You see your younger generation much more focused on that. And what do we use for secure communications? WhatsApp? No. Mainly WhatsApp? Is that what you use? You think that is secure? No, Big Brother is reading that as well, no? So please don't do your business-related communication on WhatsApp. Please don't do that. But I'm a bit off point here. In terms of your digital tattoo, in terms of your social profile, and how do we spread information? And fake news is actually a form of cyber attack because I can manipulate feelings. And we've seen that how many times. Just look on Facebook, how many times people just distribute fake news. No? Yes, and are you guilty of that? Or do you just reshare that without checking where that information originates from and who is driving that? And we've seen this whole Bell Pottinger saga that different nations is formalizing fake news, and it's distributed within countries, and it's very, very active within our social platforms. And also the way in which we share information. What do you share online besides what you had for dinner, or that you are currently at this conference, or that you have this always-on culture? So now your geolocation is also on. So now I can utilize different, for example, Twitter platforms and social media platforms to see, but you know what, something is going on here. I can measure the number of tweets that's coming out of this vicinity. And also local wireless networks, the ones on your phone. And utilize that to formulate but what is going around. So we have this huge amount of tools. A simple thing like Google, is that your major search engine? Let's Google that. Do you use anything else? Do you understand how the Google algorithm actually works? That Google doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what he thinks you are going to buy. Okay? Because it's ad-driven, it's money-driven. And that's why you have this cookies thing. So if your cookies are enabled, and that's why the GDPR, that if you go to the EU websites, then they will ask, but you have to give permission that data is kept, because that's a new regulation that came in. But utilize other search engines, maybe like the DuckDuckGo, something like Opera that comes in with a built-in virtual private network. And what is a virtual private network? It just protects your communication between your browser and whatever website you are visiting in a secure channel. Something like social mention and social bearing. MD5 is hashes. And what is a hash? How is your password stored onto a system? The moment that you authenticate to a site and you choose a password, then a hash is created, and a hash is a one-way mathematical function. So there's no reverse engineering on that. So within that hash creation, then only the hash is stored. So the next time that you try to authenticate to the site, then it will compute the hash and then just compare with what is on the system. So how does they get to the password cracking then? Is they have to utilize a number of resources to get to that same hash. And that's why they try every single password. That's your type of dictionary attacks. Because people tend to like to use password 123. Or if you're forced at work, it's Monday 123, and next month it's Tuesday 123. No, yes, and we'd like to do the minimum. So if it's stated that you have to have between 8 and 15 characters, are you going to go for 15? Nah, we go for 8 minimum. And if they force you some regulation that you have to have, you know what, include numbers, then what do we tend to do? Is we add the numbers at the end. You see how this human aspect comes in. You have to understand people. And we will find ways to bypass regulations. Isn't that what you do at work? You try to bypass because all about usability. And I will find a way in not to do that. And it was quite interesting at the Black Hat conference this year. They showed the deep locker malware. Deep locker is built on the WannaCry, but it utilized artificial intelligence. Now your artificial intelligence can focus on a specific target, and that specific target can be chosen by, for instance, face recognition. Simple thing on Facebook and how Facebook utilizes face recognition within their photo systems. That from a human mind perspective, you are about 97% accurate if I show you a picture of a face, that you can identify that person. And the current algorithms that Facebook is running is more than 98% accurate. Okay, so even if you were at a party or you were at a restaurant and somebody at the table at the back of you take a picture and they upload that, although you're not friends, Facebook can identify you within that pic. Okay, now you see, it's not just you can do whatever you want in terms of your own Facebook profile, but now suddenly you can be put at a specific venue without you even aware of that. Okay, but your face recognition at the back end is totally aware of that. So we are seeing weaponization of your AI techniques in terms of our cyber attacks. So how do we get from this data up to information? Because data is there, all over the place. Okay, we don't have a problem creating data or gathering data. The problem comes in to put that into specific categories, to classify that, to make some information from that, to extract info from that, to work up to knowledge level, and of course, intelligence. You know, there's actually one on top there. After intelligence comes wisdom, apparently. But in most cases, we are still on the information level. Okay, so because we struggle to find ways in which to really make sense of our different data senses. The first step is to understand the cyber world and the cyber world model, and in terms of where does your attacks originate, from a physical layer up to a cognitive layer. And the heart of that is actually the semantic layer, because that's your information and your data sets, and that's what we want to start off with to work towards my service layer and then my cognitive layer, where I have the people aspect or the human aspect coming in. And isn't that true, huh? You see on that hype cycle by Gartner that they publish every year around about July with your upcoming technologies, that they actually remove big data as a technology, because data is all over, and it's like security, you know. Security is not a silo thing, it's not an add-on thing. Security is integrated in every cell. Okay, so it's integrated in everything that we do. So if we refer to cyber intelligence and cyber counterintelligence in both the offensive and the defensive environment, and what tools and services can we utilize to assist us in driving this as a country, as a nation, and as a continent forward? In terms of offensive, our honeybots, our counterbots, sock puppets is creating false profiles in terms of specifically focusing on investigations. How do I track somebody? How do I create a profile and ensure that my investigations are not under the attack? In terms of that, is that a simple thing, if you connected your email addresses to your, how many email addresses do you have? One for Pornhub, yeah, okay, the other one for work. Eh? What else? So we all have this Gmail address, and maybe a second one now. Okay, we all have those, something in the closet, don't we? No? Okay, so, and then, what else? How many? 3, 4? Or do you just use your work email? Okay, that's a big no-no, huh? You have to use your work email just for work-related stuff. Is that all of that, if you connect that onto your phone, then those email addresses are connected. No. You think that nobody knows about that one Gmail address? No, it's connected. So if I run something like a Maltego, I will find all of them that's connected to you. And the same with your Facebook profile then. Remember that your apps talk, okay? So they share data. Although you tell that calculator not to access your photos, why it wants to do that, I don't know, it's connected. Okay? It's shared data. You're running that application on the same platform, that same operating system, and you can't isolate any app within that operating system because they share the same resources and they share the same data. And I think that's the scary part. So if you go onto somebody's Facebook, maybe somebody that you stalk, oh, we all stalk, no. No, we do that. We have to see who this person is. But then it can come up on their side as a friend request. Okay, you know what, just give that sort of list of possible friends, and you think, who the hell is this? On that list, and you know what, most probably that is somebody that connected onto your Facebook site. So stop stalking that guy too much, eh? Just, you know what, back off a bit. Rather go maybe the Instagram route or check what they are doing on the Twitter route. In terms of the cyber threat spectrum, we have to understand where our tools and technologies are developed and how they sort of dribble down. So you have your nation states that are very well funded. Okay, so we have currently about 30 countries that have the cyber capability formally listed as part of their military divisions. Okay, so that's 30 countries. So you have countries like China. China sitting with 50,000 cyber warriors. 50,000. Okay, do we have an army like that? That can come up and say, but I have a problem here in South Africa. Okay, protect my infrastructure. So it starts off there, and we've seen that with Vault 7 is the number of tools that is available there. And of course, a country like North Korea used that WannaCry and launched that WannaCry ransomware globally. And then it dribbles down. So, you know what, if that tool is developed, if that ransomware is developed, and now suddenly your antivirus systems come into play and bring in new signatures to defend against that, now you need R&D capacity to find something new to circumvent that new patch that's been up there. Okay, so that's another R&D. So they will make available that tool that's no longer bringing in the money that they are used to, available to your lower platforms. Okay, so that comes down to maybe dribble down to one of your lower criminal networks. It's made available onto the dark web. And that becomes part of your intelligence and part of your own threat profile to realize, but if a specific ransomware is suddenly made available on the dark web, okay, what is going to be the repercussions of that? Because now every single guy that thinks he's a new hacker will try that ransomware and see if he can make a few bucks. And in terms of our social networks and our terrorist groups and how they integrate and how they utilize social media, such as your Twitter accounts, which start off as a Twitter account, where it start off as taking over somebody's Twitter account. And within that, you populate information and you spread your propaganda. They actually hacked into a system from the US where they made available some of the personal identifiable information from soldiers so that they could be targeted. And that unitedness between your criminal entities and between your terrorist groups and between your nation states to understand that upper level network and know but who is working with whom and who is sharing resources and expertise in terms of getting together. And then your criminal forums, there's a few that's available on specifically some of them on the open web that you can access. I don't know whether you understand Russian, most of them are in Russian. So if you want to specialize in one of those fields, I think you need to up your Russian skills a bit. And then also, in terms of the virtual currencies, that provides a way. Remember, a virtual currency is pseudo-anonymous. It's not totally anonymous. We tend to think it is. But in terms of your dark web, then everything is payable. So if you buy your drugs or whatever, and the post office will deliver that, you still have to pay in your currencies such as Bitcoin, just because it's not it's traceable to an address, but it's not necessarily traceable to the person behind the address. And that's how we can that's how we find intel in terms of specific addresses, and we can see in terms of that funding who received how many funds in that. And we need to go a bit back in history, especially if we work on the intelligence side and see about what went wrong with a number of states. And if we look at, I know who of you are interested in that type of history. But know that that first part, moving from data to information to knowledge, as you know, is that understanding the data, understanding if you have a system that you sit with logs, for instance, and what data is in that logs, and how can we utilize all of these cool technologies that you guys are doing within the next few days, and those resources to assist in being a proactive security and not just a reactive. And at the end, the power is in the hands of those who control information, isn't it? I thank you.
Thank you very much. If you're also interested in seeing hacking live, just go to Hall A. You can see this current student security competition is running. So that you can, and please ask the students or the mentors there for if you want to see what they want to do or how it's actually done live. But let's get to questions. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Addison Snell. I'm with Intersect 360 Research. I appreciate your presentation. I observe that, as you point out with regard to history, that as long as there's been community or civilization, there's been crime. And as long as there's been independent civilizations or nations, there's been war. And as we advance in technology, that gets incorporated into both. And I'm perceiving your presentation in context of the preceding one from Michael Foley regarding National Research and Education Networks, where he stressed the importance of connectivity for everybody. So we need to be connected, and yet we're subjecting ourselves to the dark side of the force, as it were. Do you have particular recommendations as to how to approach that? I travel here, I need to be online. I have a choice between using my phone and paying all of the international data rates or signing on to the free hotel Wi-Fi and everything that entails. Do I give up and crawl into a hole, or do I take specific steps to protect myself? What do I recommend, or do I just close my eyes and hope it will be okay?
Yeah, cool question. Yes, I think it's about awareness. You know what, I think it's about understanding the field, understanding, but if I download this app, you know what, that's the implication. On a basic level, have a VPN installed. In other words, on your mobile phone, because we tend to have this dissonance between, but that's my laptop, and I've got all of these security features on my laptop, antivirus and firewalls and everything, but my mobile, who's got antivirus on their mobile? Dead. See, 1, 2, what percentage is that? 0.01%. A VPN is a virtual private network, something like Nord, NORD VPN. Don't go the free stuff. Why not the free stuff? Because it's not free. Okay, they will get something in return there. Install a VPN. So if you know, VPN is just an app. So the moment that you need to connect to a network that is not trusted, such as a local Wi-Fi here, it's just connect your VPN, because then it starts encrypting that communication. So if it's encrypted on a packet level, then I can still capture the packets, but it won't help me anything. So I won't get access to the data. So those are two basic things. And I think just be aware, we do love applications. And yes, it's there to make our life a bit easier. But if you download a calculator and wants access to your contacts, just think a bit and say, why do you want access to my contacts? And I think we need to bring in awareness levels on all levels. You know, I think our biggest culprits is our upcoming generations, and because they just click away and nothing has happened and I have nothing. You know what, we go about that I have nothing. So yes, on a more practical level is get antivirus on your phone and get a VPN running. Does that answer that more or less?
Please note, EduRoam is trusted. Thank you. More questions? Okay.
Sorry, one of the things that I've often encountered with security is that is a question of energy asymmetry. That, and if we look at automated attacks mean that the energy investment for the attacker is now very, very low. But most of the security advice I've got is extremely manual. Do you see a scope for automation? Because if we look at like how we manage our large data centers with thousands of computing devices, we automate them, we don't manually manage them anymore. So how can we perhaps use automation to reduce this energy asymmetry that is impacting security at the moment?
I think there is already specific applications, especially on endpoint monitoring, because your sort of closure, you know, but your boundary is not a network anymore, so you can't just protect that. So it's split all over the place. So in terms of automation, is continuous endpoint monitoring, and that's an automated process. Okay, so it's just, you know, it works like a little app that's installed, but it keeps track on not, you know what, monitoring what you are doing, but monitoring whether your system is used in or utilized within an attack. Yes. I think we aren't doing enough, and I'm hopeful, I'm sort of excited with your AIs and your quantum computings that come in, that we can utilize that more in a specific, you know what, on par level. But at the moment, you know what, it's just that step ahead that it's way easier to automate the attack than automate the defense.